He would not survive the night. I sat inside a litter pulled by a white mule through the dark, mostly silent city. A servant held a lantern on a pole to light up the cobbled road. The movement swayed from side to side while I exhaled, my index finger twisting the signet ring on my finger. Occasionally it brushed against the dome one beside it, my face a mask of polite neutrality, yet my thoughts raced. The banter between two drunken ladies of the night broke the silence, as they cackled over their client's lack of skill, doing lewd movements with their hips while screeching loudly, with a mug of cheap beer in their hands, spilling it over themselves, while a tavern keeper threatened them with a broom. Only a promise and a word in the correct ear meant my future was different from theirs. Their fate could have been my own, and the contrast was immense. Leaning back, I drew the yellow curtain, embroidered with gold thread, the color of my most prominent patron, and gazed out into the night. Months of planning had taken place for this to come to pass. A hidden moon lingered behind shifting clouds, causing night to prevail, and still the lower classes prepared for their trade in the morning. Men carried heavy bags of grain or carcasses of meat over their shoulders, and all quietly moved away from my litter. The guard in front and back kept even the most greedy cutthroats at bay. The litter stopped in front of a familiar house, one I had visited many times. Wait for me. My patron rarely takes long, in more ways than one. Stepping down, after a hand was offered and walking through. There was an arch above the gate carved with the seal of the noble family, the coat of arms of one of the most aristocratic of houses. A butler stood, gaze lowered while I walked in, and lifting my veil to confirm my identity, and silently I was led inside, keeping one step behind. The mosaics and paintings on the wall all depicted ancestors of note, compared to what mediocrity remained. There were depictions of connections to lost pagan gods. Some were real, while others were most certainly fabricated to give the family prestige. Copper braziers kept the hallway dimly lit while I waited. I heard footsteps coming and glanced in its direction, only to realize it wasn't one of the living. The dead still patrolled what was their house, exhaling slowly, closing my eyes to focus, and the sound drowned out. Perhaps they knew of my intention toward their family member. The footsteps were followed by a whistling scream, faint, and the others didn't hear. A chill was the sole indication. A male servant with barely a hair on his chin led me inside, toward his master's bedchamber. The twin doors were opened by servants, and I made my way inside. The room was warm from the fire, with slow, steady embers. There was a pitcher and 2 goblets of wine waiting on a nearby table. The wooden bed had ornate patterns of flowers and cupids for fertility. His wife had her own quarters, and would likely be on her knees praying. My patron was nowhere to be seen. Walking through the room, noticing open notes, and a letter with a red wax seal on his desk, unbroken. It was from the king, and another that had been broken, one with blue-colored wax with a rearing horse, the symbol of another prominent family. Skimming it quickly, and seeing talk concerning a union between the lord and a daughter of their house. The fact he was currently married was of no concern. There were legal and illegal ways to rid yourself of an undesirable spouse, leaving the paper there for the time being. With some free time before my performance would begin, the servants kept the room dusted, pacing around the room and staring into the fire. Ashes of paper on one side, suggesting a note or notes had been eliminated through fire. What letters were destroyed to preserve him or someone else? Removing my transparent veil and pulling pins to allow stray curls to drop, allowing my hair to fall around my face. I knew what he desired. Loosening my red velvet bodice to reveal the top of my white chiton, semi-dressed and with my laces loose, ready for a moment of lust and for our bodies to be entwined together. Dipping my finger in the ash, gently smudging it around my eyes, and using wine on my lips to darken them. I had never been left waiting for this long. Normally he came quickly, in more ways than one, fiddling with the ruby pendant dangling from a gold chain around my neck. I took a seat with my back to the door, a dangerous move if someone wished to have me dead. Holding the goblet at an angle, the reflection in the liquid would warn me of any attempt on my life. Soon, I felt his kiss on the back of my neck. His hands moved down my bodice with not a single word spoken. I smiled, turned and pressed my body against his. His nightshirt did little to hide his amorous intention. Squeezing on my back, I put a finger to his lips to keep him quiet, directing him slowly back to lay on the bed, and in an instant, he was under my spell, waiting for me, as though in a trance. I lifted one of the goblets, poured wine inside, and took a sip. Swaying my hips, pulling the laces until it fell away, leaving my body in a state of semi-nakedness. My fingertips caressed the rim of the goblet. A discreet flick and my poison ring cap opened. The powder dribbled down into the liquid. 1 tap, he would sleep. 2 taps, he would sleep for a long time. 3 taps, and he would never wake up. Once the 3 were done, closing the ring cap, while swaying my hips and smirking over it while I sipped, instantly I felt my lips tingle, the telltale sign the poison was taking effect. I offered it to him. 1 large mouthful and his eyelids grew heavy. He murmured under his breath, asking what was happening to him. I shushed him, straddling him, and he soon fell asleep. His breathing was heavy, steady, and with a final rasp it stopped. The deal was done. I waited to check, pressing 2 fingers on his neck to check for a pulse. Finding none, I knew my task was complete. Taking the necessary note with the broken seal, discreetly hiding it in my hands, fixing my clothing and pinning back my hair, concealing it with a veil, and knocked on the 2 doors. Your lord bids he is to rest and not be disturbed. The 2 servants did not protest, and I walked in the direction of quarters I did not expect. The twin doors opened, and I entered into rooms that were equally as grand. Seated in front of the fireplace were 2 chairs. A noble lady gestured for me to sit in the vacant one. The lord's wife, now widow. The lines on her face were more prominent, decked out in jewels, with the king's ransom around her throat, and she extended a coin purse to me. I accepted, squeezing it gently. I knew my fee was in there. Even more. This is too much, madam. Her hand raised to stop me. It is done? It is. You will never need worry about him again. A smile on her withered, strained face, and she exhaled. A clear sign of relief. While it was best to never get attached to any client, it warmed my heart. Her beauty had faded through stress and being forced to bear many children. Those children's future was assured. Her eldest son would inherit, and she, a lady of a noble house, would not be forced to enter a convent to make room for a younger rival. Her son would be lord and master, while she would be a wealthy widow. free to pursue life as she wishes, unwilling to overstay my welcome and risk being killed. I stood, bowed my head respectfully, and left before an accusing finger could be pointed at me. Settling inside the litter, knocking twice to bid our movement, and seeing the spirit of my latest victim staring at me. Still in his nightshirt and reaching out with his hand, I turned away. Wiping my mouth, my lips and throat tingled, my immunity to the poison slowly wearing off, and opening the door, spitting it outside. But it wasn't fast enough. My head swam. The concerned face of my guard appeared. "Take me home. Just take me home. Nowhere else," I hissed, his face nothing but a blur. The litter traveled at a trot, the hooves on the cobbled street while people darted out of the way, cursing as they did so. Memories of becoming accustomed to the poison swelled inside me. I was 8 years old when I was exchanged for a bag of coin, taken by a madam of a house of ill repute. I grew in relative safety, listening and watching the interactions, studying clients' behavior. What lies caused them to offer more coin? Whose tastes lingered where, and how to swindle more coin out of them? I had a warm bed, food, and my task was to bring wine to the guests. I was left untouched. Later, when I reached maturity, a bargain made for my virginity, and I was taken to prepare myself for the occasion. He sat on the chair and bid me to sit on the bed, his face obscured by shadow, the aroma of myrrh and other exotic perfumes, and a twirl of a gold coin over his heavily ringed fingers. More money than I had ever seen in my life. He flicked his fingers, tossing it at me, and I caught it, nearly fumbling. I saw the flash of his white teeth and a chuckle of amusement. I clutched that coin tight, unwilling to let him pry it from my fingers. He offered me a new life, as his protege, an exchange of coin, and I traveled away to the strange home that became part of my regular life. He taught me how to mix poisons, arsenic, hemlock, belladonna, and how to carry them safely. To breathe in or even touch some would result in a timely demise. The worst part was adapting to the minor poisons. Immunity was a slow, painstaking process. He showed me how to conceal it inside my jewelry, an earring, a necklace, or a poison ring. I screamed and arched my back, fingers clenched and my face dripping with sweat. I was carried inside my home. "Take me to my quarters. Don't summon a physician." If they did, I'd have to weave a story to explain what happened. I was placed on my bed, and he fled yelling he would get the serving girls to help me. Once the door slammed, I reached under my bed, unlatching a small wooden box. Rummaging through the vials, taking a purple-colored one with a long spout, and pulling the cork out with my teeth, taking a mouthful of it and waiting. The tingling became numb. Purple, red, black. Purple, red, black. Remembering the order was essential for survival. My heart slowed. Taking the red one, small and expensive, I swallowed 3 drops of the sickly sweet liquid, and my stomach turned. A hand resting on it, and leaning off the bed while I vomited up the contents of my stomach onto the floor. My throat was on fire, and now the final one, the black vial. Barely a drop was all that was needed. Once one drop touched my tongue, closing my lips and slipping back onto the soft pillows, my vision blurry and my heart pounding. All I needed to do was wait it out. My dreams and memories would combine. I remembered the city guard breaking into my master's quarters, seizing and arresting him for an attempted murder. I pretended to be a scullion, a kitchen maid with no knowledge and who only cleaned. They took me back to the prison, and I was released onto the streets with no protection, now forced to use the skills I learned to survive. I found a discarded piece of bone, sharpening it using the stone wool into a point, and hid it under my sleeve. Walking through the streets during the day was already dangerous. I felt eyes watching me, either for my coin or body. I needed a place to sleep or rest. Perhaps I could go home to my family, or return to the madam who may have granted me safety. I didn't want to try my luck come nightfall. I asked the baker, apologizing and asking for the Sunrising Tavern, the local establishment nearby. He pointed down the road and I thanked him. I still had the gold coin, the first and perhaps the last gift from my mysterious benefactor. I walked down the road filled with people, too busy to notice me. The memory stopped when Sophia's face loomed over mine. Her words were a concerned garble. I waved her off. No, don't worry. It just needs time. Time? Time to work. I was walking down the busy alleyway, the stench of human waste added to by a beggar relieving himself on the nearby wall. Looking away in disgust, showing too much emotion was risky. It made you a target. Cutthroats, procurers of flesh, pickpockets, and a host of others. I kept walking, gnawing the bone knife out of my hand, and kept glancing behind me. I heard leering while a man pointed to his crotch, offering me a lewd proposition for the chance of getting a coin. I saw the wooden sign swaying. Already a crowd had gathered outside with patrons, and I hoped they would recognize me. The madam's house and my parents' crowded den were close. A hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around and stabbed down with the knife. The tip barely pierced, and I saw those familiar dark eyes staring down at me. A twinkle in them. His facial hair changed to a cropped beard, a hand resting casually on the pommel of his ceremonial sword, and a cape draped around his shoulders. If it weren't for a guard nearby, I imagine he would have found himself robbed. I nearly didn't recognize him. My guide, my mentor, my teacher. My jaw dropped in surprise, smacking his arm. He was dressed like a wealthy merchant, the sumptuary laws preventing him from wearing the brightest colors or silk. His expression changed, and he bid that I follow with a click of his fingers. Watching his retreating back, wrinkling my eyebrows, and followed at a distance. Was it even him? Where did he go? I whispered, staring up at the ceiling. Now back in the world, my body burning up, and I was on the brink of death. The images of my life passing. It had been a decade since I last saw him. He took me into his room inside the tavern and knocked on the door 3 times. He taught me a great gift. Letters, to read and write, that aided me in my current life. His mistress, Marguerite, a woman with different hued eyes, one blue, the other green. Both were striking, amber-haired and pale, wearing the height of fashion. She took me under her wing to teach me the courtly arts, manners, dancing, embroidery, and in all but name, wealth and title. I could easily pass through the nobility, languages, sciences, politics. When I came home one day to find the room packed up, a carriage out the front, and no plans had been made for me, he handed me a note. It said, "Go to Rome and tell me the movement of this cardinal. Be kind to him, and you will find yourself wealthy." I knew what that meant. I became involved in the politics of the papal court. Shadows, cloaks and daggers, and whispers behind the papal seat. My cardinal, my first patron, passed from age and I sent a letter. In code, always in code. I gasped. The light was blinding. Opening my eyes, an array of sunlight pierced through the wooden shutters. One of the servant girls must have entered and opened it. My wooden box of antidotes was off the bed, the bottles each upright, and fortunately, she didn't touch a vial that contained Thanatos' dark kiss. Sitting up, I was breathless, a hand resting on my chest, and glanced through the shutters. No guard had been alerted, and matters appeared peaceful. Opening the doors, finding the villa to be deserted, and walking through the expansive hallways, I didn't notice any signs of danger. No items had been looted, nor had they been thrown over the floor. "Hello?" I called out and silence greeted me. Perhaps I was still dreaming? A cowled figure waited for me at the end, and narrowing my eyebrow, a strange, uninvited person inside your home, in a place known for intrigue, was never positive. I expected to see a shine of a blade in their hand. The figure only faded away. Was this a warning? A foreboding of doom? Exhaling with the moment past, walking through to the kitchen, one of the busiest parts of the villa, and it too was deserted. The flour on the table with different ingredients, and everything had paused in motion, as though they would return, take up their duties, and none would be the wiser. A message. I woke up once more inside my bed. It was mostly clean. Grey weather loomed, and outside I heard the servants chatting, wiping the stale vomit with the back of my hand. My body ached, and pulling the chamber pot out from under the bed, I covered my mouth to conceal a squeal of surprise. Inside was the severed head of a beardless man, the neck stem clinging on, and his eyelids and lips sagging. It was fresh, and hadn't begun to stink yet. On closer inspection, I realized it was the footman who had accompanied me on the night I dispatched the Lord. Was it a revenge attack from his family, his sons, or betrayal from his wife? It meant my other employees were now at risk. If I told them, panic would flow and suspicion would be raised. Picking up the head, wrapping it in thick cloth, the traces of blood inside the pot would raise questions concerning my cycle, yet those could be waved off. I wondered what happened to the rest of his body. Would I find it inside the villa, or on the grounds? Lifting it up and taking it to the physician's office, the owner, my patron, would not be returning to the villa for months at least. Holding it in my arms, still wearing the clothing from the previous night with wild hair. "Have there been any messages or letters for me?" I asked the servant girls, who shook their heads and returned to their cleaning, trying to look as industrious as possible. I never trusted them. They were my patron's choices, and likely passed on any news about my dealings to him. It was unlike them. One approached with arms outstretched, ready to accept what they thought of as dirty laundry. I said nothing and offered it to her. It would have been strange not to. The maid humbly walked in the direction of the laundry room, and at a distance I followed her. Not once did she look inside. Surely the girl wasn't a simpleton. It weighed more than other bundles of crumpled sheets. And why would it only be one? I watched her, head downcast, and walking without raising attention to herself. I didn't recognize her. In large estates, it was difficult to keep track of all the servants, who could be in the hundreds. But one so close as her, she should have been received, and I would have learned about her. "Who are you?" I whispered under my breath. She froze, turned back over her shoulder, and a mischievous, cat-like gleam to her eyes. "Who are you?" I insisted. I followed her to the laundry, too deserted to be normal. The ovens heating the enclosed space, causing sweat to drip from my brow line, and there were sheets hanging up. Large wash bays filled with water, with fabric draped over the edge, or floating inside, with large wooden paddles resting. The maid stood in the center of the room, standing upright with the posture of a queen, and turned to face me. Her features were different now. Her eyes no longer drooped, they sparkled, and her chin upright, hands clasped together in front of her. She unwrapped the head of my footman, and tenderly stroked the bloodied, dark curls on his head, as though he were a pretty little pet. "Was it you?" I demanded, only for her to shake her head, and I did not believe her. Moving on from the deceased, "Who are you and what do you want?" "Silly girl, you forgot to check," she purred, staring at me with one green and one blue eye. The duality. I finally recognized her from my past. Marguerite, the mistress of my one-time mentor. Her finger pried open my servant's mouth, taking up a curled-up note, and handed it to me. I took it, knowing better to ask how she was, or what they have been doing. The parchment was coated with wax, to protect it from the bodily fluids, pulling the twine and opening it to see a single symbol, one that caused me to shiver with pure dread. In black charcoal was a noose, death. "I think it is time for you to run, my dear. Don't worry, there is gold in the spot, and you are to join him in London. The horse is saddled and is ready to go." Before I could answer, her hand was raised to stop me. "Go. I will clean up here. Farewell, child." She turned and left. I had no time. I ran down the pathway, still not fully dressed, and regretted my decision to take so long to get ready. The dirt path leading to an abandoned chapel on a small hill that permitted me to see the road. The guard were in attendance with their banners, and riders coming down the road. I must have been betrayed. I hurried inside the chapel. The roof had fallen down years ago. The doors were gone, and the stonework had been plundered for other projects. There was a quiet majesty to the structure, and now it was home for nesting birds who flew away when I approached. Waiting near the entrance, I realized I had nothing. No coin, no weapon, no support. Walking through, the pews were destroyed, and the altar had clearly not been used for some time. Other than myself, no one was here. I checked around the altar for the supplies, and there were none. I was nervous. It had been some time since I'd ridden a horse, and an unaccompanied woman would draw attention. A horse's neigh alerted me. I ran in the direction of the sound and saw a man holding a saddled horse. "Where are we to go?" He opened his mouth to reveal he had no tongue. A mutilation. He handed me a gown. Without time, servants, or a mirror, I had to make do, leaving the discarded garment, and once done, I mounted the horse. Together, we cantered down the roadway, and I itched to know what had gone wrong. I knew I'd need to change my appearance in order to escape. We arrived under the cover of night at a house of ill repute. The workers stood exposing their chests to the gathered crowds, fanning themselves and calling out promises of their skills. Eager patrons made their way inside, and I walked through the room set aside for me, and there was a bed. I sat down, and only a curtain concealed my room from the main space. Looking around, and felt how the mighty have fallen. Using henna from the eastern lands, I dyed my hair to lighten it, washing it out of my hair with the assistance of one of the workers, and drying it so it became a coppery red. I bathed the dirt off from the road, and my clothing was exchanged for a simple chiton. a washed-out blue in color. The material was rough to the touch. Applying a heavy white powder on my face, using my reflection in a bucket of water as a guide. From my room, I watched which workers gained the most coin and who was left on the sidelines, which clients arrived, noblemen, merchants, and while the establishment was prosperous, it didn't appear to be one frequented by the elite. Fortunately, I wasn't bothered either by worker or potential client. Resting with my back on the wall, unwilling to risk sleep, and waited until morning. Around me, obnoxious snoring echoed, and opening my eyes, the limp bodies surrounded me. Rubbing them with the back of my hand, I noticed a shadow standing over me. I knew it wasn't human. Staring up at it with nowhere to run, the figure had a loose outline of one wearing a cloak. It was difficult to tell the gender. It bowed its head to me and I returned the gesture. I had another job. Even being on the run, I had to answer the summon and complete any task put forward to me. And I could not stop. Looking to the entrance of the building, I saw him. My mentor. He stood, this time garbed in a monk's habit, with a cowl covering his face. It was not an uncommon sight in the holy city. Those familiar eyes gazed across at me, and without words he told me my next task. I had to kill a noble, a patron of the establishment, and to make it bloody, all to send a message. I'd know my target when I saw them. I inclined my head in respect, acknowledging the command, and when I looked up, he was gone. I noticed one of the other workers staring at me, and in the direction I'd been looking. We barely smiled when we met each other's gaze. Cleaning myself, and silently going to get food and water before the evening when I'd start my shift. Taking a piece of bread and a bowl of soup, the madam smugly told me the food would come out of my fee. I smiled submissively in acknowledgement, with no desire to pay. I'd serve in this role, then I would be guided to my next task. When dusk was settling in, I lined my eyes with coal to highlight them, with the candles lit and waited for my target. I couldn't appear to refuse clients. I kept my eye on the door, and soon exchanged coin with an elderly gentleman. He stood up to my shoulder, and still desired to live up to the vigor he had in his younger days. I took him by the hand. He mumbled under his breath, and I pretended to listen to his stories, holding him in my arms while he rested on my chest, while he chatted about his past, making promises to take me away from this someday. I knew he was lying. Under my soothing touch, he soon fell asleep. His servant paid, thanked me, and they left when I saw my target. He was seated with a goblet of wine in hand, with a flutter of workers around him to gain his attention. Barely concealed curves beckoned to no avail, with even the males attempting to lure him if his tastes were elsewhere inclined. His attention remained on the liquid inside his goblet, occasionally dipping his finger inside to watch the movement. Soon the workers' focus went elsewhere while they attempted to get their money's worth for the evening. I couldn't tell where his taste lay, to be commanded or to give commands, a conversation or simple intertwining of bodies. Both could be catered to. His gaze met mine, and I couldn't tell what class he was by his clothing. No velvet nor silk, nor did he wear the coarser fabrics of the working class. My would-be victim was both unremarkable and striking at the same time. Slipping through the crowd until I came to my target, taking a seat beside him, and he did not notice me. I could have poisoned him if I had my equipment. Now lost inside the villa, I saw the skin on his left hand, sunken in, gaunt, clinging to the bone with long fingernails. I'd heard whispers of strange beings, often residing in distant lands, and stared at his face. His skin was without pores, no blemishes. For a man of his years, it was difficult to tell. Perhaps he was an alchemist who learned the secrets of eternal youth. There was no warmth from him, no heat radiating from his body, and when I placed my hand on his forearm, leaning my body on his, I felt the chill of the dead. His flesh was rock hard, a skeleton underneath, and I stared at his face that did not look at me. I withdrew my hands from him, only to have him reach out and grasp my wrist. The skin burned where he touched, and I flinched, barely able to conceal my pain. It turned its head to face me. It had the soulless eyes of expensive gems, the same soldiers or sailors would use if they lost an eye in battle. Its gloved hand lifted up the mask to reveal a face with a skull, its skin barely clinging to it, and only a long, wheezing breath came from its decayed lips. A twisting maggot wriggled out of a hole in his cheek, dropping onto the floor. The other patrons nor the workers made no noise, nor did they scream at the sight of him, staring at them flirting and drinking, their naked bodies moving together while the music played. And my moment was stuck in time. "Is it my time?" I whispered, thinking death was approaching. It reached inside its tunic and cupped 2 eyeballs in its hand. Those of my mentor, lifting one and pushed one eyeball in and then the other. "You?" It answered with a slow, unholy wheeze, and only added to my confusion. "What do you want me to do?" My voice low. "My target has not yet arrived." The gloved hand pointed to the candles, to the limited flames lighting up the venue, and should others perish in the course, they would join him inside a fiery demise, companions in death. He released my wrist and I spilled alcohol on the sheets, the curtains, the cushions, and on the clothing of the other workers, who didn't realize my motives. I pocketed what coin I could while they were distracted, rebuilding my lost wealth. All believing it was part of the festivities, they joined me, and it was only the madam who realized. Only when I tossed the lit candle, while the flames swiftly spread, engulfing the place in fire, and the scream of patrons and workers alike filled the air. Stealing a heavy cloak, I ran and outside, staring in, or while my mentor sat in the center of the chaos. The last thing I saw before the doors were closed and barred forever. With a new name and identity, now at a masquerade ball, surrounded by beauty, and without a target, my hand resting on a wealthy patron when I saw him, his skin renewed and handsome once more. He raised his goblet in greeting to me. It would seem my mentor was difficult to kill. And what did you think of the story? What did you think of the courtesan and her secret? Who was your favorite character? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, is that a cricket? God damn it. Did you see the little visitor? If you did, let me know the timestamp down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. Since YouTube doesn't always notify when a new video comes out, consider following me on my socials, links down below. If you haven't yet, consider becoming a channel member or a Patreon supporter. The latter has a free tier you are able to join. Each get exclusive perks. Look at this list of amazing people. Look at them. Look at them. Any help is greatly appreciated. However, watching, commenting, and all that good stuff always definitely helps out. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.